We actually have been planning our birthday party for her at Disneyland, and we have family coming from out of town that's coming to visit, and we were planning a birthday party there. So my sister actually has 2 kids, and one of them is under a year old and hasn't had his MMR shot yet. So she has concerns of whether or not it's safe to actually even come to LA at this point.
Measles, one of the most highly contagious viral infections known to man. 90% of people without immunity sharing living space with an infected person will catch it. Those are the hard, cold facts. Yet there remains a subculture of what some would call incredibly foolish people who insist they, and especially their children, do not need nor want a simple vaccination that would stop the disease in its tracks. And they are single-handedly causing an epidemic to spread across America. Let's welcome to Midpoint the Director of Medical Ethics at the New York University Langone Medical Center. Dr. Arthur Caplan joins us today. Dr. Caplan, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Caplan, here we go. This is now the worst outbreak of measles in California in 15 years, and it was a handful of cases, now grown to 62 confirmed cases across the state. We've got it in Colorado, Oregon, Utah, Washington State, and now even Mexico. Is it not fair to say that this is just, and I understand some people will say they don't want to do it for religious reasons, whatever here, but an incredibly foolish and stoppable epidemic here if people just got their kids vaccinated for measles?
You're right, and it's an incredibly selfish act, too. You know, newborn babies, kids under 1, don't really respond well to vaccination, so they're especially vulnerable to the measles. You have a situation where people think, well, I don't need to get my kid vaccinated. Everybody else is doing it. I'll be a free rider. That is incredibly unethical, incredibly selfish. Other people say, well, I heard somewhere on the internet it's not safe or it's got some connection to autism. None of that has been shown to be true. It's been debunked again and again. But really, you need to protect not only your kids, but everybody else's kids.
Dr. Caplan, if you would, do me a favor. Would you back up just a bit and say that again? It has been debunked over and over and over again. All this talk by the anti-vaxxers that the vaccination causes autism and other diseases.
So we have seen lots of people come out and say, celebrities among them, that the MMR vaccine, the measles vaccine, is dangerous or causes autism. It has been debunked over and over and over again. Not a shred of evidence supports that claim. It's a lot of fear-mongering. It's a lot of nonsense.
Would you agree then with the comment from James Cherry? He's a specialist in pediatric infectious diseases at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, who said, and I quote to the New York Times, there are some pretty dumb people out there.
There are some people who are not only dumb in that they get their evidence from Hollywood celebrities, but there are people out there who are selfish. Protect my kid, not just your kid. I believe, actually, that if you infect my kid with measles and I can trace it back to you, then you ought to be liable in terms of damages for making a decision that made my kid sick.
Is that what people are missing all the time, is that they're not just doing this to their kid, but they're doing this to kids across the country now, and it is spreading? I think what you brought up about legal action, I can hardly wait for some lawyer to hear this interview because I can imagine they're already starting to go for the legal books. It's not a bad case if you think about it.
I've written that I think we are overdue for that case. Look, vaccination is what you do for your neighbors. Vaccination is a community action. It's not something you just do for your own person or your own child. It's for everyone else. The more of us that vaccinate, the more difficult it is for the measles vaccine to find someone who, the measles virus, to find someone who hasn't been infected and get it them. In other words, herd immunity.
Are we looking at the same thing when we come down to the potential for whooping cough here? Because whooping cough is in even a little bit of its own epidemic in California now as well.
Well, whooping cough and measles are among the most infectious diseases. Flu, pretty infectious. Ebola, pretty slow. So the problem with measles is it hangs around in the atmosphere. You go in a room where someone was that had the measles, it's still hanging around there. You can get it. It really relies on all of us to do the right thing and get these vaccines done.
All right, two other things I wanted to touch on. You just mentioned Ebola. There is a British drug company, GlaxoSmithKline. They're one of the biggest in the world. They're shipping the experimental vaccine now for Ebola to Liberia. What's the skinny on this from the medical community? Is this something that they believe is really going to be very effective and can bring this disease under control?
Well, ironically, the first doses of the vaccine are being sent over to Africa, but there's only a couple hundred of them. It would take another 9 months to a year to make enough of this vaccine to have any impact on this outbreak. So this one's going to be fought without the vaccine. It'd be great to have it for the next round or the next time Ebola appears, but I don't think anybody in medicine really thinks vaccination is going to be the solution to the current epidemic. That one we're going to have to do with good public health, isolation, teaching people not to touch dead bodies, that sort of practice. Sorry to say, I don't think the vaccine is going to be here, not because we don't find one, but it would take a long time to build a factory and make it.
Our couple of minutes that I have left here, let's discuss what's going on. Also, it's odd how everything seems to be happening in California these days, whether it's on the positive side or the negative side. But here we have 9 California lawmakers announcing legislation that would allow doctors in the state to prescribe medications to hasten death for the terminally ill. This is the Death with Dignity measure. Can I ask your opinion on this?
So this is probably flowing out of the Brittany Maynard case. Remember that one where the young woman moved up to Oregon,
Sure.
had a brain tumor, and said very publicly, I think everybody should have the right to do this. Assistance in dying, very controversial, I understand that. But we know from Washington and Oregon State that it has been in place about 10 years in each state. No abuses. It's worked. It's restricted just to the terminally ill. That's the third rail. You can't just take someone with Alzheimer's or something and use this. But I think overall it does make some sense to give people this option. By the way, it also got introduced in the city of Washington this week, in Washington, D.C., in the city council. And I'm hearing that we're going to see other activities in other states in the next week or two. So the California thing is part of a national movement. This debate's going to be with us for a while.
I got about 30 seconds left. Very quickly, what's your response when somebody brings to you moral objections on death with dignity?
Well, I understand them. It's a close call. It could be something that's abused, and some doctors say they don't want to do it. But I think there are physicians who participate in this and can do it. And again, evidence from Oregon, evidence from Washington shows it can be implemented in the U.S. without abuse. And I think some people have felt, the families feel that their loved ones benefited from it.
You're right. It's going to be a debate that will go on for some time. I just hope that in the couple of minutes we've had together here that maybe if we've turned one parent to go out and get that measles vaccination instead of waiting, it'll be a very good thing. Always a pleasure, Dr. Arthur Caplan. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care. There's a new man at the helm of the world's largest oil-producing country. What, if anything, it means for America is the source of discussion. We'll get to it. Bulls, Bears, and Bucks when we come back on Midpoint.